We've made it to module number 6, the last of our modules in our class on managing an e-commerce business. Module number 6 is merchant accounts and supply chains. This is the heart and soul of any e-commerce business. We're going to look at the two pieces, merchant accounts, and then this thing called a supply chain. Merchant accounts are off-the-shelf accounts, and they are all over the place. It's commonplace these days to have a merchant account. There are many companies that offer them, and we'll see a slide in a minute showing many different merchant accounts. What merchant accounts do are the following. They have a payment processing area. After all, when you sell items or services online, somebody's going to pay you. That money is going to come in either by an e-check, a credit card, or some payment system online, and therefore somebody needs to process that payment for a small fee after all. POS equipment, or point of sale equipment, is also a part of a merchant account. Banking relationship as to where does that money go when it gets transferred into your merchant account. Extended credit, who is going to give credit to you in order to run your business, and then this thing called automatic or automated deductions. Automated deductions are things, for example, if American Express is your account processor or your payment processor, American Express has to automatically deduct their 1.5% or 3.5% processing fee. And so how do these automatic deductions come into play when we have a merchant account? On this slide, you'll see a myriad of places that do processing. These are some of the big boys of merchant accounts, and they include the big banks, all of which are not up on our slide. But I wanted to include something that is new in this space called the financial technology firms, or Fintech. Fintech is now a big word used in the banking space because companies are now financing businesses, and they don't even consider themselves banks. They don't even consider themselves lenders. Well, they don't even consider themselves credit companies. They are financial technology firms. One of those big companies here is Fintech. Another one is PayPal. These Fintech companies are out there moving money, and they're moving money in the electronic commerce space. This area is going to become more regulated as time goes on, because as more companies are involved in merchant accounts for businesses like yours, they're now going to have to fall under some sort of financial regulation. As you notice, some of these are banks. Bank of America, Chase, Wells Fargo, SunTrust. These banks now all offer merchant accounts. And if they're offering merchant accounts, that means that the other companies offering merchant accounts must fall under some level of financial regulations as the banks themselves. Now, the objective in becoming a big player in the merchant banking space is basically to build up your business, build up your volume. You're learning to swim with the big fish in a big pond. That pond is expanding. And as you build up your business, you kind of sit back, watch your volume grow, and wait for a buyout bid. This is the new place that financial technology firms have now taken up in the e-commerce business. So the selling of items is just a small piece of the picture for them. The big picture is to grow the volume of your fintech firm to the level that you're now either one of the big fish or somebody comes in and offers you a couple of $1 billion to buy out your firm and you move on with that money. So if you're going into the e-commerce business, you may even want to consider going into the financial technology side of e-commerce, build up that business, and come up with a nice fat offer to buy out your firm. And now we come to this last piece that we're going to discuss, and this has to do with a supply chain. It's called an e-supply chain management system. E, of course, for electronic commerce, supply chain. We've learned from this pandemic something very interesting, and that is when you have a supply chain of people supplying you with items, that supply chain can become broken. What has happened over the last several years, I should say, few decades, is supply chains have now become global in scope. So if I'm an American company and I'm building cars, I'm now at a place where I'm getting the parts for my cars coming from Mexico, coming from China, coming from Taiwan, coming from Vietnam, and all of these parts are coming into me, so I build a car at the cheapest possible price. There's a problem. When something like a pandemic hits and suddenly the shipment of items get disrupted, suddenly my supply chain gets broken. The reason we talk so much about supply chains is in the e-commerce space, the global supply chain is huge. For example, if I am making masks, the masks need a certain type of fibers. Those fibers are coming either from Canada or they're coming from Vietnam. If I don't have access to those fibers, guess what? My machines that are making masks, they're now idle. Idle machines is the result of a broken supply chain. In the e-commerce space, most often we are buying either goods or we are buying services or we are buying some component of our manufactured goods from some supply chain out there. And if that chain gets broken, our business comes to a grinding halt. In the e-commerce space, here are some interesting pieces to a supply chain. One, automatic shipping. When automatic shipping gets broken as a part of a supply chain, that breaks your business model. Many business models got broken during this pandemic because shipping fell off the face of the map. Inventory replacement. If I am selling cases for phones on eBay and my supply chain is a company manufactures them in Vietnam, ships them to China where they get stamped and they get cut into place to fit the different phones, and then they get shipped out to my customers as they order them, or they get shipped to a warehouse in the US where they're going to sit until my customer calls for them. If that inventory replacement chain gets broken, my business model is suddenly broken. Web-based warehousing. Web-based warehousing is someplace on planet Earth where all of my things are stored, and there is a web-based application that counts how many of them are in that warehouse. If I had 5,000 in there and I sold 2,500, I need to know that there are 2,500 pieces left in that warehouse. More than that, I need to know how many are red, how many are brown, how many are blue, how many are green, and so forth and so on. So web-based warehousing is a part of the supply chain, and it is a component of a supply chain. And then we have this thing called low-touch or no-touch supply chains. Low-touch and no-touch supply chains have to do with someone manufactures these pieces for me. I pay them for manufacturing them for me, and they hold them in their warehouse. And they do something called FOB or forwarded shipping from their warehouse straight to my customers. My customers pay me, and I call on my supplier to supply my customer with what they've ordered. Low touch, no touch supply chains tend to get broken first. They get broken first because if something happens to my supplier, by extension, it has happened to me already. So the e-commerce business and the supply chain that you choose to use is very important. There are some companies now that are doing supply chain management for their customers. Two of the big big suppliers of supply chain services now, believe it or not, are UPS and FedEx. UPS and FedEx are now maintaining warehouses, just like Amazon is a supply chain service manager. Amazon would keep your products in their warehouse, and when somebody orders your product on Amazon's platform, by the way, then Amazon's employees go to that part of the shelf where your items are kept and they ship it out to your customers. That, incidentally, for anyone who's buying stuff on eBay and on Amazon, they don't realize it, but these things are not held in somebody's basement. Somebody does not have phones in their basement, and when you make an order, that phone goes out. That phone is probably sitting in a warehouse of FedEx in Memphis, Tennessee, and the day that your customer orders that phone, an employee in FedEx's fulfillment department in Memphis goes to that shelf, takes that phone out, puts it into a FedEx transportation case, and off it goes to that customer. The last slide that you're looking at here is a kind of a convoluted looking slide, but I threw that in there for a reason. I want to show you how supply chains from the brick and mortar up to the e-commerce space has changed. If you look back into the 1960s and 1950s, in the 1960s, the supply chain was considered fragmented, meaning you had this one large building, and in this building, you had several different functions taking place in that one building. By the 1980s, so many functions got squished down that there are now only about 3 of them. There is the materials management, there is physical distribution down at the bottom, and then there is warehousing, materials handling, and packaging in a 3rd location. That was called consolidation of supply chain management. By the 1990s, we've now turned into something called integration. In integration, it simply means all of the logistics are done in one place. That, by the way, is an example of where UPS and FedEx came in and started telling people, hey, you don't need to operate a warehouse anymore. Send them all onto our central location and we'll manage it for you. By the 2000s, we moved into something called capturing of value or value capture. Value capture is where it no longer is advantageous to keep materials in a warehouse. It is now kept where it is manufactured. So if I have a company in Ithaca, New York, that's manufacturing boxes for me, and I need to send those boxes to a buyer, let's say Publix, now wherever those boxes are manufactured, they're going to get shipped directly to Publix, and all I'm doing is moving something called value. So I went from moving pulp to that manufacturing facility to moving boxes straight to Publix or whoever is buying those boxes, and I did not have to get involved. By the value capture place in the 2000s, we're now talking about supply chain management that involves information technology, marketing, strategic planning, and finance. Totally different functions than back in the 1960s, for example. And now we have moved into a new space of evolution, and that is automation. Automation is now the order of the day. Automation means somebody makes an order. My platform that I'm using, my merchant platform, is now going to source that item from several different sources, pick the cheapest and fastest, and send that on to my customer. It is now an automated process. So if you're going into the e-commerce space, remember, you are going in to the e-commerce or the e-supply chain management that is now under the automation. It is no longer the big warehouse operations going on anymore. It is now automated, so whoever has the item more readily available, they get the sale and that item goes off to your customer. And so there you have it. The 6 essential lessons for managing an e-commerce business. I hope this class or this course, as you want to see it, helped you to get some insight into how managing this e-commerce business is not terribly complex. Most of us can pull this off, but you simply need to be aware of these different components of the business so that you can be successful, and not just successful, you can be sustainably successful. Thanks for watching, guys. On behalf of AARLCC, on behalf of Broward County Libraries and the Board of County Commissioners, we hope this was useful time spent until that time that we can open up our libraries again for you in here, where you can actually sit in this classroom as we do these classes. Joe Caton here saying so long.